Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be doing a top 5 list. I haven't done many of those over the course of my YouTube career, if you want to call it that. But it's something that I enjoy doing every once in a while. I did it last year, and it was pretty popular, so I figured, why not do one this year? Now, I will say that it's already February, so I don't know for sure if I'm going to be doing a most anticipated list of 2016, just because I think some of the games that I would include on that list have already been released. But what I will be doing is a top 5 most played games list of 2015, just sort of looking back to the previous year and seeing what did I enjoy playing the most last year. Now, as with any list, I will say that this is just a subjective sort of what did I enjoy playing the most and what did I play the most of last year. This is hardly an all-encompassing list, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think were your 5 most enjoyable games in the description as well. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and take a look at the 5 games that I ended up spending the most time with and enjoying the most in 2015. So the first up on this list is a game called Rule the Waves. And this was sort of a surprise hit game in the wargaming community. It was one of those games that kind of came out of nowhere and had quite a bit of success, at least within the wargaming community. This is a game which puts you in command of one of the great powers in the world, starting in 1900 and playing through to 1925. The game puts you in control of one of the navies of those 5 great powers, and basically you play the role of a Grand Admiral. So you're in charge of designing your fleet, and then in a time of war, you are in charge of fighting your fleet. The game really spoke to me because when I was younger, I used to play around with programs like Spring Sharp where you could design your own hypothetical ships, and that's definitely a key aspect in this game, the ability to design your own ships. There is an ability to kind of automatically design ships, but I think one of the really neat features in this game and one of the really appealing features in this game is basically being able to create your own designs, build your own designs, and then test them out on the field of battle. There's a lot of space games out there where you can design your own spaceships, but there aren't many games out there where you can design your own warships, and I think that's a interesting and unique aspect to the game. It takes place, as I said, from 1900 to 1925 and is sort of this era of arms race between the great powers leading up to World War I and then the immediate post-World War I era as well. This is an era where there was massive changes in warship design and warship technology, so it makes for a good time period to examine, naval combat and naval technology, and also where you design your own ships. It really adds a lot of variety to the types of designs that would have been popular during this time period. The game has, I'd say, one weakness in that the two weaknesses, I would say. One is the political aspect, is that it's really interesting as you play the game. Tensions kind of rise and fall between different countries, which helps to spur naval spending. You have to basically create your fleet, manage your fleet under a limited budget, but as tensions go up or tensions go down, that influences how much money your political overlords give you to spend on the Navy, which that aspect's really good, but the political aspect can be a little bit confusing. It's very random and sporadic, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rationale between why certain nations become your rivals and other nations become more friendly. It adds an element of randomness and an element of replayability to the game, but it doesn't seem in keeping with the sort of 1900 to 1925's theme. You could really just rename Great Britain to Jabalistan and whatever you want to do. I mean, there's really no meaning to the country's names insofar as politics are concerned. Budgets, yes, but not politics. So that was one aspect that I think could have been a little bit better done. And then the other aspect is just sort of the way that the fighting works. You don't have a whole lot of control over when major naval battles take place, which as a Grand Admiral, it would be nice if you could say, okay, have the main fleet sortie and, attempt to clear the sea lanes if you're blockaded or whatnot. There isn't a lot of control there, which could be better. But outside of that, It's a heck of a fun game, very addicting, very unique. Something that I would love seeing expanded upon, and I look forward to whatever the developer decides to do next. The second game on my list is another game that I don't think will be too surprising to see on this list, and that is Order of Battle Pacific. And let me reiterate here, this list is in no particular order, so the fact that I mentioned Rule the Waves first or Order of Battle Pacific second doesn't make them number 5 or number 1 or anything. Again, it's in no particular order. But Order of Battle Pacific is a turn-based game which takes sort of the historical Panzer General-like puzzle kind of hex-based war game that has a very abstract units and very abstract combat and brings it to the Pacific, an area that not a lot of these types of games have looked at. You could certainly say that the sort of Panzer General mantra may have been done too often and maybe something that gets very repetitive, but Order of Battle Pacific really feels fresh in this genre of games. Basically, you fight a series of battles, starting with Pearl Harbor, which I had my own reservations with. I didn't think it was an ideal scenario, all the way through World War II as either the Japanese or the Americans, or now you can even fight on the Chinese front with the recent DLC that just came out, Morning Sun. But basically, you fight a turn-based battle as you move units across the map and attempt to capture different objectives. But what Order of Battle Pacific does that's really unique is these secondary objectives are mixed in, which makes the game feel less of a, move left to right across the map and overwhelm units and figure out the best way to overcome obstacles in a very sort of puzzle-like game, and instead gives it a very, almost a more free-flowing and unique gameplay. Again, sometimes you have to liberate certain units that are cut off behind enemy lines, and then that gives you some bonuses, which that is not something you really ever see in any Panzer General style games. And then also the supply line aspect. So traditionally, sort of Panzer General or Panzer Corps, you could advance your troops kind of out on their own. It didn't matter if there were enemy units between them and their point of origin. Sometimes it would influence the ability to resupply units, but outside of that, there was really no sense of a front line. And that's one of the big aspects that Order of Battle Pacific adds. It adds a front line mentality where you can see where your troops control and where they don't as they advance. You can see these lines advancing forward. You can cut units off, cut their line of supply, reduce their ability to fight effectively, and then also the aspect of supply. So certain cities and towns and objectives provide a certain amount of supply, and if you've got too many units and not enough supply coming in, then the units also will fight less effectively. It also allows you to add sort of the historical Pacific aspect, where you can use destroyers and you have to kind of bring them along the coast to provide supply to units that might be low on supply. And that is very similar to the sort of Tokyo Express history behind Japan using destroyers to try and bring supplies into places like Guadalcanal, or supply ships as well. It adds a logistical component. Why would you ever attack a supply ship in a game like Panzer General? Well, they didn't really exist. But if you did, there'd really be no reason to, unless they were, a land unit that's on a transport. Well, in this game, supply ships exist because supplies are important in allowing your troops to fight on these remote Pacific islands. So it's an interesting game, and I've been playing it quite a bit, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit, and it's certainly been in the top 5 games eating up my time in 2015. The third game on my list is a game I always hesitate to talk too much about because I do have an interest in the game, and that game is Scourge of War Waterloo. So, being upfront and totally transparent, I am a tester on the game, so obviously I'm a bit biased when it comes to the game. But it's a game that allows you to refight the Battle of Waterloo. There's a series of scenarios, including an all-day battle scenario where you fight the entire Battle of Waterloo as either the French or the Anglo-Allied / Prussian armies. So in the game, you fight through kind of a series of scenarios that are designed to recreate the Battle of Waterloo, starting with the attacks on Le Hougoumont on the French left or Allied right flank in the morning, progressing to the massive infantry and cavalry fights toward the center, and then as the day wears on, as the French right comes under pressure, as the Prussians begin to arrive under Marshal Blucher, you can fight battles along that side of the battlefield as well. The game also has a sandbox campaign where you can march around a map of northern France or Belgium and kind of create your own battles through some of the historical towns there in a very sandbox campaign layer. The game is a lot of fun, in my opinion. It's a game that is very well put together in terms of the scenarios are very well thought out and very well designed, and has hours and hours of gameplay. The whole day battle is an 8-hour battle all by itself, and then you've got 20 other scenarios that you can fight through in addition to the sandbox stuff. So if you're interested in history, interested in sort of the age of linear combat and musketry, in my opinion, it's a great game. And I've been pouring a ton of time into it as more than just a tester, but just pouring time into it because I enjoy playing it. The fourth game on my list is going to be maybe a little controversial because I think I'm going to throw the top 5 strategy games that I spent the most time playing with in the title, and I don't know if I really consider it a strategy game. The fourth game on this list is World of Warships, and this has been a game that I've been pouring a lot of time into. Haven't been covering it too much on the channel. There are a few things I think would be kind of neat to do with the game, but it's not been something that I've been demonstrating too much on the channel, just sort of my occasional here status updates, and I don't have a game I want to talk about type deal. I'll throw the footage in there. And this is a game that is more of a FPS, but kind of a first-person ship shooter, if you will, where you play with other people online and fight other fleets and attempt to destroy the other fleets. It's been a game I've been playing a lot of and really enjoy. It can get a little bit repetitive at times, and it's certainly a grindy kind of game, as any of the World of games are, like World of Tanks, where you just have to pour hours and hours in to kind of advance to get new ships unlocked. But essentially, you play a series of battles. You just play other people online, or you can play co-op battles against the computer. And you've got different tiers of ships that you unlock as you play more and more often. That's kind of the best way to describe it, and it's addicting. I don't really have a whole lot else to say other than that. You can see the footage here on the screen, but and yes, I know I'm using the St. Louis is a tier 2 or tier 3 cruiser, so I know I'm not really using an advanced ship here, but anyway, that's game number 4 on my list, World of Warships. And then the 5th game on my list is a game that I played a lot more at the beginning of the year and not so much lately, but that game is Attila Total War. Attila Total War fixes a lot of the problems that Total War 2 had, Rome Total War 2 had, in that it's just a much more stable, a much more reliable game to play, but it also shifts the setting from focusing on the early Roman Republic to the late Roman Empire. And in this game, you play as either one of the barbarian tribes or as Eastern or Western Rome in an attempt to withstand the barbarian tribes. The game has the typical Total War combat. I still feel like with Total War 2, the battles are much more rushed than they used to be, and that can be a little bit frustrating. It seems like people are sprinting around on the map and battles are over in 5 minutes. That's certainly something that I find somewhat annoying. But the game does a lot better job in portraying a sense of dread and a sense of sort of decay as these empires, East and West Rome, are slowly starting to fall apart toward the end of their history. And I think that's the piece of the game that I enjoy the most, is that the game really does capture this sort of decay and desperate attempt to stay alive at any cost, and often some of the decisions you have to make in the short term to save you could potentially hurt you in the long run. Originally, I would say the original Rome Barbarian Invasion expansion of Rome Total War was one of my favorites, so I may be predisposed to liking this. But it seems to me that when the Rome Total War series focuses more, or not Rome Total War, but when the Total War series focuses more on a specific time period and limits that to, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it does a much better job than these massive open sprawling games. So the Rome Total War 2, where you kind of fight over 100 years and you're attempting to expand your empire, that game gets into a very predictable you can't lose phase after the first couple of, 20 or 30 years. Where Rome Total War, Attila, or I guess it's not even Rome Total War, Attila Total War, you really feel like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. It doesn't seem like you get in this scenario where you easily build up and then you can't be beaten. And I'm probably not doing a great job of explaining this, but I feel like the Rome Total War games do a better job, or just the Total War games in general, do a better job of portraying declining empires when you have way more territory than you can easily support and where things are falling apart. It does a much better job of simulating that than it does in simulating a rising empire, because a rising empire very quickly in their games gets to a point where it cannot be beaten. Whereas if there's already intrinsic weaknesses in your empire and it's already large, it's a more enjoyable and more challenging game. So that would be the 5th game on my list. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit more here. Since I included World of Warships, which I think is debatable on whether it's a war game or not, I'm going to have an honorable mention included in this video as well. So I suppose you could say it's my top 6 most played games of 2015. But the next game I want to talk about is a game that I keep meaning to come back to and keep meaning to create this epic series of videos that I've wanted to do for a while. I'm about 2 months behind schedule on that. But that game is War in the Pacific Admiral Edition. And the reason that I didn't include it, in my list, my official list, is because the game is pretty old. It's, 6 years old since the Admiral Edition came out. So it's hard for me, actually a little bit less than that. Maybe it's 4 years old. I'm not sure, but it's 4 or 5 years old, which makes it hard for me to say, yes, this is in my top 5 list of 2015, because while in last year, for example, I included some games that came out the year before, I think it'd be a little bit much to go back and say, this game that's 4 or 5 years old is in my top list of 2015. But with that being said, War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, I've been pouring hours and hours into it for the Operation Glacier series with Belugan. I still am going to do something with regards to creating video content for it. I just don't know what. Haven't had the time that I would like to have. Maybe when we get into the summer and I have a lot more time, I'll be able to do it more regularly. But War in the Pacific Admiral Edition, a game that takes the highly detailed games of like Hearts of Iron 3 and just cranks up the level of detail to an absurd level. It models every single ship, every single aircraft, every single unit of like a company size or more on a map of the Pacific that's 40 square miles. An absolutely incredibly detailed game. It's incredibly addictive when you play it in a play-by-email sort of setup. There are days where we don't do any turns, and there's days where we spend 5 hours playing the game in a day and crank out 6 or 7 turns in a single day. So one of the most interesting and unique experiences that I've ever had with a game. It's a game that makes you want to pull your hair out and throw the game against the wall, and yet you can't stop playing it either when you've got a really good play-by-email game going. So, one of the few games that I could say keeps you up at night thinking about what am I going to do next? How am I going to respond to this move by Belugan, who, by the way, is a lot better than I am at this game. But that would be an honorable mention. War in the Pacific Admiral Edition, honorable mention on my top 5 most played games list of 2015. So without boring you any longer and rambling any longer, this is, as I'm sure you can tell, a very off-the-cuff recording. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and let me know your thoughts. Let me know what were the 5 games that you played the most in 2015, and leave it in the description. And thanks again for watching, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, I'm out.